as we get started, there we go. We are started officially. As we get started, my name is still Laura Steigelman. That has not changed. I still have a company called Florida Training Solutions. I love what I do. I feel very fortunate. Do a lot of these kinds of trainings, meetings, those kinds of things. Want to do a big shout out to Elder Source. Alex, you're on here. So if you'll give us a wave, Alex, if you're willing to do that. Alex does all the behind the scenes things. She maintains that email list. She compiles the email that goes out with the link and all that kind of stuff. So Elder Source via Alex does a lot of that. And Andrea used to be our person, and she's kind of the backup who helps Alex, but Alex does all the work behind the scenes. And someday when we are back in person, hopefully Elder Source would be willing to host us again. And we'll be back there to say hello across the room to each other at least. And then Community Foundation, we so appreciate.
Great. Thank you, Shauna.
Whoops. Can you hit the mute? I think that's, there we go. To unmute myself, there you go. Community Foundation started this group. They still are our funder and supporter today. They're huge on anything that we need or help with, etc. They're a great resource for us, and we so appreciate them. And their goal was to give an opportunity for folks that are serving in the senior sector, either by job or by interest, that they have an opportunity to connect and network with each other. So that is why this group was started. And we're just really grateful to them that they have hung with us and continue to do that. Okay. So I don't know why my slides just stopped. There we go. Okay. So the meeting will be recorded. And you saw probably the little thing on saying the meeting is starting now. Alex, the famous Alex that I just talked about from Elder Source, will in the next day or two send a link out to anybody who wants to come back and retake this, or you have a colleague who couldn't come today and they want to see what the meeting was about, and maybe they would like that information, etc. So that is available to you. I mentioned the chat box. You have that. Mine is right to the right hand side. And you can move that chat box. There's an option there. If you play around with it a little bit, you can have it what's called pop out. I have mine pop out and I move it over to my second screen just because I got a lot going on in front of me already. So in the chat box, you will see information, and you'll see information about different things that people have going on. And we'll ask everybody just to keep it very senior focused. If you've got an event coming on, an initiative, something that people should know that would help them with what they do in their senior serving role or their interests, please feel free to post that in the chat box. We will ask for everybody to keep themselves muted with the exception of the speakers. We do have a tight schedule, and the speakers have been begged and encouraged to time themselves. We have everything to the minute of what's going to happen today. And if there's time at the end of any of the meetings, we'll take questions. We'll ask you to put those in the chat box. We'll get those to the speakers, and I'll remind everybody of that as the speakers start. And then if you're able to put your name, first and last name on your video for networking purposes, the way you would do that if it's not there already, and again, if you're not living on Zoom, like a lot of folks probably here are, if you hover over your own name, for me, 3 little dots pop up. When I click on those 3 little dots, I can rename myself. So if I would also like to be Eileen Rodden, who is amazing, I could be Eileen Rodden Jr. or Senior or whatever if I wanted to. For Eileen's sake, I'm just going to stick with Laura Steigelman to not confuse anybody in the group. And then if you're able to keep your video on, that's awesome. We miss each other. We miss human contact. People are doing everything they can to stay, kind of up and connected with each other, et cetera. And it's just one of those ways to do that. And if you have any questions or need something and you don't need to go to the whole group with that, you can chat directly to Florida Training Solutions, which will go to my Zoom producer who's sitting right here. The way you would do that is in the chat box. It says to everyone, probably by default. You can open that up and just send something to Florida Training Solutions. So when you send it just to Florida Training Solutions, if you say, hey, I got to drop off at 9, or I've got this going on, or can we send a flight, whatever that might be, you can chat it to Florida Training Solutions. He'll keep me in line and let me know that something's going on that I need to know about or address or talk about or whatever. So what the heck is Senior Roundtable? Is this anybody's very first meeting? Is anybody here for the first time? Okay. So great to see everyone. If you are newer to this group is a coalition agency. Oh, first time? Awesome.
Yes. Stacey Jones, I'm here.
Very good. Very
Maria,
glad that you're
it's
here.
my first time. Maria Jordan from the Voted Health Plans. It's my
Awesome.
first time.
Awesome. Welcome.
And Laura, this is my first time as well, Laura. Thank
Oh,
you.
John, great. Thank you. I'm so glad that you are all here. So some information, we hope you'll come back. We meet every other month. It's open to all, no charge to attend. So anybody from anywhere that's interested in these topics is welcome to join us. You can get on the email list with Alex, who you'll see on here if you joined a couple minutes after we started. She maintains that email list if you want to get notifications of the meetings. And again, the purpose is to network with colleagues, make new contacts, and we always offer some kind of a program to say, here's some additional information about a topic that you might be interested in. Sometimes it's a small part of it to say, and if you're interested, contact those folks. They may even come in and do a presentation, et cetera. So we always look for things that would be helpful for folks who are, again, serving in the senior sector. So it is all about collaborative relationships. That's what this meeting is about. And where are we going today with our meeting that we have till 10:30? So hopefully you're able to stay with us. If you have any organizational announcements, we'll ask you to put those in the chat box. I'll circle back to that here shortly. Meeting sponsor is Oasis Senior Advisors. The meeting sponsor gets 3 minutes on the schedule today, and also is very generous by giving 2 gift cards, one $25 each for Amazon, to 2 winners that are at the end of the program. You have to be present to win, and we'll kind of draw names virtually. So if you haven't seen that before, you'll get to see that too. So we'll hear more from Oasis Senior Advisors here shortly. Networking opportunity, you'll get a chance to meet and greet some folks that are here in the meeting. Hopefully some folks maybe you haven't seen for a while, and at least a couple new faces hopefully for you to continue to grow that network. Our program today, we are really happy that we were able to get these folks to agree to give up some of their spare time and come and share knowledge with the group. So we've got Katherine talking about estate planning. Cameron's going to talk about pre-need planning, and Jamie is going to wrap that section up with discuss, decide, document, get the care you want. So 3 great resources with lots of information about that planning for later in life. Hard topic to talk about. Nobody wants to think about it. It is a reality. So again, good kind of prompter to say, how are we all doing with that? And then we will wrap up with those door prizes that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So with that, if you do have any announcements that are senior sector focused, so for example, the fact that my kid is playing soccer this weekend, nobody cares about that. And I'm not going to put that in the chat box, although it's important to me. So if you have a senior focused initiative event, we had several folks that have a study going on that they're looking specifically for people to volunteer for studies that are senior focused, et cetera. The chat box is where to do that. And if you're going to do that, please put in some contact information. How should people get a hold of you if they're interested in either participating in whatever you've got that you're talking about, or if they just want to get more information? Another way to do that same thing is in our LinkedIn group. So we have a Northeast Florida Senior Roundtable LinkedIn group. I think it's also in the chat box. And we'll do that again, because if you came in after it was put in the chat box, you're not going to see it. You only see what's put in after you got here. So we'll put that in there again if you would like to join. And it is, again, just that same thing. Are there initiatives, events, and things like that? Please don't overpost. It is not for sales or anything like that. It truly is a connector. There's a lot of opportunities for sales and things like that on other avenues, your own LinkedIn profile, et cetera. So we really ask for you just to keep this focused on networking, connecting with each other. And if there's somebody that you meet in one of these meetings and you can't remember exactly how to get a hold of them, check this group because they may be in there, and that means that you can also contact them through LinkedIn because you're both in the same group. So we have a poll that we're going to launch, and let's do a quick check-in in how everybody's doing. And there's 2 questions. It should be anonymous. It's set up to be anonymous. Hopefully that works. So let me just give you about 10 seconds. Take a look at those 2 questions. Let's see where everybody is. Another 5 seconds for anybody who's looking over the options. Okay, so I think they can see results. Okay, so the results, 29% working mostly virtually. 38% typically at the office, and then we've got a hybrid of that other third is there. And then how are people feeling about whatever that work situation is for them? A lot of people really like it. Not thrilled, wish it was different and interesting, because some folks are back at work, wish they weren't. Some people are at home and wish they were at work. They're just ready to get out of the house or have more of a business atmosphere or whatever that might be. And then a lot of folks, it's okay. So just a quick check-in to see how is this group doing, where are we at? And it looks like we're kind of split almost equally across the board here on those three options. Okay. All right. And I did mention that Al with Senior Oasis is our sponsor today. So with that, and Al, you're in charge of your own timer, and I know that you're on top of that already. We've already talked about that. So with that, we're going to ask for Al. Let me change my background to a birthday background. Al, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you for being our sponsor today. We so appreciate it. And tell us about the services that you offer.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you everyone for coming to my Senior Roundtable sponsored birthday party. So I appreciate that. Really, I'm glad you're here to have me share with you my passion for seniors. I'm part of Oasis Senior Advisors. It's an 85 office strong organization that helps seniors and their families navigate the senior communities and senior services in all regions of the country. And the way that we earn our income is we get a finder's fee when we have a private paid senior enter into a senior community. So this opens up the one major question: what's my differentiator? And my differentiator is my mantra, which is leave no one behind. And let me give you some examples. And this has been my fabric for my whole life. Well, I was in the Marine Corps. I volunteered in a hospital and helped my fellow Marines who were injured and wounded, and did that for a month. When I was a high school teacher, I worked in a district where I helped expelled students who needed to graduate, find a job, and I worked with the police departments and things of that sort to help them. I also helped veterans with disabilities, and I want to show you one thing that I received. I am a lifetime member of the VFW for what I've done with veterans with disabilities. So what does that leave no one behind mean for me today? Simply means that any senior and their family who come to me for help, I will leave no stone unturned to help them. And nonprofits like Beam and Heartfelt Ministries, the Senior Services of Jacksonville, and a lot of the local churches come to me looking for help for their seniors who have nowhere else to turn. And so to you, my audience here, I want to leave you with one thought. The door is open to all of you who may have a senior who needs help. Thank you.
And Al, again, happy birthday, happy birthday. Al, I don't know if you can see the chat box. I know you're on phone, but the chat box, there's lots of happy birthday messages coming in there to you. So if you're able to see that, we so appreciate you again for being the meeting sponsor. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There we go. The activities are going crazy here. So, all right. So we always love it when you get a chance to meet others that are here. So this is an opportunity to grow your network. Make sure people know who you are, what you do, how to contact you. And hopefully there's somebody here that you say, gosh, I need to know more about their services. That's something that would help my clients or my knowledge, et cetera. And you connect with each other post meeting. So with that, you're going to get an invite here in just a little bit. And I think in the chat box are the directions in there that are coming. You're going to get an invite here in just a second. And we're going to ask for you to head into a breakout room. And when you head into the breakout room, if you will share, and you'll see that in the chat box. If for some reason you can't see what's in the chat box, there's probably people in your group that can see it. If you're like, all right, what is it that we're supposed to be talking about? And it really is pretty straightforward. Who are you? Where do you work if it's applicable? And we do have folks come in that they're just involved with senior initiatives. They may not necessarily work for a senior place, but it's a big part of what they focus on and a passion for them. And then you'll have a total of 7 minutes. After the 7 minutes, we will automatically bring you back. So at 6 minutes, you're going to get a countdown clock. And if you'll just keep an eye on the clock and just make sure, meaning your clock, if you'll please just make sure everybody gets a chance to share and introduce themselves and connect before we bring you back. And then we're going to mix you all up and we're going to do it one more time. So this is an opportunity to say hello, grow that network, say hello to some friends that maybe you haven't seen for a while. So an inmate. All right, so here we go. So we are going to go ahead and start our program. You can see our speakers and kind of the flow of what's going to be happening then. And then speakers, again, if you'll manage your own time, that is appreciated. And if anybody has questions, feel free to hold those to the end. We'll ask you to put in the chat box. If you don't want to wait because you're afraid you're going to forget, go ahead and put them in the chat box and we'll try to roll back in case there's a lot of activity in that chat box. We'll try to roll back when the time comes at the end. If there's time left for some Q's and A's, we'll get to your questions in there. So if you've got something that can't wait, put it in there. If it can wait, it's just easier for us to grab because it's right in front of us when we're ready for that time. When you are the speaker and you are up, if you will please also do a just introduction of yourself. So don't be too shy about your qualifications, your background, and all of those things. It just helps us understand kind of the space that you're in and how you happen to have that knowledge that you have, which we so appreciate you being willing to share. So with that, I'm going to ask everyone else if you'll please stay on mute. Katherine, we're going to start with you if you're willing to kick us off and let me know if you need anything from us. Otherwise, we are going to also go on mute and we're going to be here to support you from our own little virtual screen. So there you go.
Well, good morning, everyone. Janice, thank you so much. Laura, thank you so much for scheduling. I was just talking to Janice. I'm sorry, my brain. Laura is wonderful. She worked so hard at doing this and it's invaluable to our senior community. So you should be getting big kudos and I really appreciate that. My name is Katherine Naugle. I'm an estate planning elder law attorney. My practice is in the Riverside 5 Points area. I concentrate on preparing estate planning documents for my clients. I try to avoid situations being more stressful than they need to be. So, which is very important, especially right now. My typical client before COVID was someone who's either just had children or is getting ready to retire and says, oh, I haven't done my will since my kids were babies. I need to update it. Well, sadly, right now, we're seeing more people my age that are needing these documents. So it just becomes even more important. What I wanted to talk to you guys about first was just what I recommend to my clients when they call as far as a basic package of documents. Now, this could be for an 18-year-old or an 80-year-old. I'm going to recommend the same, at least basic package of documents. So the first document is called the last will and testament. That is where you leave your assets to your beneficiaries when you pass away. Within that, you name what's called a personal representative. That's the person that's in charge of gathering together assets in your individual name and distributing them to your beneficiaries. Things that are not included in the will would be anything that names a beneficiary. So if you have retirement accounts, life insurance, even regular bank accounts, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whoever it is, you can list beneficiaries on. But those things pass outside of the will. Anything, so if I pass away and I have a bank account in my name that doesn't have a beneficiary, it's going to have to go through my will. And so that's what we do for people. So that's the last will and testament. We also do what I think is one of two of the most important documents to have. It's called a durable power of attorney. That is what I call a lifetime financial document. It allows you to name someone to make financial decisions for you during your life. So under Florida law, that is immediately effective when you sign it, but it is so important to have. What it does is if I were to become incapacitated for any reason, and I have a power of attorney in place, then the person that I've named as what's called my attorney in fact could step in and pay my bills, pay my taxes, manage my real estate, my finances for me until I regain capacity. So that is financial. I always tell my clients it's a very powerful document, so you need to make sure that you choose someone that you trust with your financial information. But it's so important to have. And I'll tell you why when I finish with my little spiel here. The next document that's the second most important of the two to have is called a healthcare surrogate designation. I'm sure you guys all know HIPAA because we all work in that role. Well, when HIPAA passed, even spouses and children cannot legally get medical information for their parents, their spouse, their children, if they're over 18 without a healthcare surrogate being in place. So what happens is this allows you to say, if ever I cannot make my own medical decisions, I want my daughter or my husband or whoever it is to make those decisions for me. So God forbid you have to go into the hospital and you become incapacitated and you can't give consent for them to talk to your spouse or your child. They have this document in place. They give this to the hospital. The doctors will talk to your family. You can get medical records. They can make medical decisions. Very, very important. I had a question here. Can you have two people as durable power of attorney or healthcare surrogate? Yes, you absolutely can, Justine. So with durable power of attorney, which is financial, I don't typically recommend that you do that. The reason I say that is because when we name two people to act jointly, they have to make joint decisions together. And a lot of times I see issues with families when that happens. But yes, legally we can draft it that way. I always recommend having a primary person and then a backup just in case, because you need a CEO basically in charge. But yes, we can. And with healthcare surrogate, the same thing, my same caution there that yes, you can, but I think it's better to have a point person and then tell them, I want you to work with your siblings or whoever it is. That's just my opinion. So that's my thought on that. Now, the power of attorney, if you have two people that you list jointly, you can allow in the wording so that they can make decisions on their own without having to consult with the other person, or you can draft it so that they have to make decisions jointly together. But that's something I, like on a case-by-case basis, would talk with the client about. My first question typically is, are you married? Do you have children? If the children are not the children of your spouse, does everybody get along? Because that's going to tell me right off the bat, are we going to have trouble? What do we have to plan for? Or do your children get along? Sometimes, they get along great. And sometimes they say, no, they can't stand each other. And so we have to be very careful when we do that we plan for that. So that's something to think about with your customers. So the will, which is where your assets go when you pass away, the durable power of attorney's financial, healthcare surrogate designation is ongoing healthcare. We recommend that you have a living will, which I'm sure you guys all know what that is, but it's an end of life document that says you don't want to be kept alive artificially if there's no chance that you're going to recover. So I'm sure we all remember the Terry Schiavo story. That's kind of what put that into the news. And then the last document that's part of the basic package is called a designation of pre-need guardian. What that says is that if the court ever had to step in and appoint a legal guardian for you for any reason, it allows you to say who that guardian would be. In Florida, the only legal reason someone can't serve as guardian is if they're a convicted felon. There is a priority spouse and children have equal priority to serve as guardian. But again, we get back into the family situation where, you know, mom's coming to me doing her estate planning. She knows that her 2 kids don't get along, but one child would be a much better fit for guardian. So that's where it's important to have the pre-need guardian in place so that she can make that choice while she's competent. That is a basic package that we all need. You need it, I need it, you know, even the 18-year-old going to college needs it, in my opinion. So what is a guardianship? Guardianship, and I don't know how much y'all know about this. Caroline, I know you know quite a bit, but guardianship is when someone does not have, well, there's 2 different types. So the first type, when someone doesn't have capacity to make their own decisions, either financially, personally, healthcare, where they live, and they typically do not have a durable power of attorney for financial or a healthcare surrogate in place, then there's no one that can legally make those decisions for them. So at that point, the family, or sometimes it's a professional guardian, they have to go to the court and ask the judge to appoint somebody to do that, to make those decisions for them. I do a lot of guardianship work, but I try to prevent it for my clients because it's not the best way to proceed. So guardianship is a 2-step process. We have to file a petition to determine incapacity. When that's filed, the judge appoints, I'm looking at my clock here, sorry. The judge appoints a 3-member examining committee, which is typically a nurse, social worker, psychiatrist. They go out, they meet with the person, they file a report. There's also an attorney appointed for the what we call the alleged ward. That process takes about a month and a half, assuming that the person's incapacitated, before the judge appoints somebody. The reason you want to prevent that is because if mom's in the hospital, you don't want to be sitting across the table with me saying, I can't, they won't talk to me, I can't make medical decisions or pay bills, anything like that. You want to be with mom. But also it's expensive. So to set up a guardianship ranges between $6,000 to $8,000 if it's uncontested. You know, typically like an estate plan, like I talked to you about the basic package with the will, the power of attorney. For an individual, I charge $1,000. So would you rather pay $1,000 and plan ahead, or pay $8,000 and it's much more stressful? So it's financial, and it's also just, you know, I have clients that'll come to me and say, you know, thank goodness mom came and did her power of attorney and her healthcare surrogate with you, because she became suddenly incapacitated and it was just invaluable to have. So it's just important to really think about those things. So I feel like I've touched on the estate planning and guardianship. Probate. So when do you have to probate assets? If you pass away and you have assets in your individual name, so if I have a bank account in Katherine Naugle's name that does not name a beneficiary, that asset has to go through probate with the court to transfer to my beneficiaries. Having a will does not prevent probate. What it does is it allows the probate court to know where you want those assets to go. So again, very, very important that you talk with an estate planner and understand why you need it. Sadly, I've had 2, as you'll find out, my husband owns a funeral home. And so there's a lot of, you know, a lot of times they'll have their clients call me with questions. 2 last week clients, they were not married, man and woman, longtime partners, lived together, no will in place. Partner passes away, house is just in his name. The surviving partner, she's not entitled to anything under Florida law without a will. Now, I hate having to tell people that, and it makes me so sad and sick on my stomach that they didn't go and talk to somebody to plan, because a lot of times there's a child on the other side of that they're not going to give the partner, say, oh, okay, well, I know dad would have wanted you to have this or that or have the house. Had that the man or the woman had a will, she or he could have controlled that situation and left those assets to who they wanted to leave them to. So people say, oh, I don't have anything, I just have a house. Well, you do have something, and it's so important to talk to somebody and plan for that. So I don't know if that's, I'm not going to talk to you today about trust. I'd be happy to, if you want to call me one-on-one and talk, but that's another way that you can avoid probate as well. But I don't really have time to get too much into that. But I just would encourage you guys, if you're talking with your customers, that maybe be part of it. Is, do you have estate planning in place? What is your situation? Because it's going to make it easier for you guys as well, so that if that person you're caring for has incapacity, they have things in order for that. So any other questions for me? I hope I didn't throw too much at you.
No, so Katherine, you're good. You've got 2 minutes. I'm going to read you a couple of the questions in the chat box that pertain to your part of it. There's a couple others that pertain to the funeral part of it. So I'm going to hold those. A question came in, can someone make changes on their will and initial the change?
No. So when you sign a will, we prepare it, we send it out, and then we have our clients come in and they sign in front of 2 witnesses and a notary, and that makes it valid. If you want to make changes, you cannot just cross through your will and initial it. That is not a valid change, and it's not legally enforceable. So you would need to call your attorney. You can do what's called a codicil, which is a minor change to a certain portion of the will, but no, unfortunately, you can't make the change yourself.
And then Katherine, for this is a question I have. You mentioned trust. In about a minute or two, if you don't mind, and then when you're done, if you want to transition into the person that's speaking on behalf of the funeral home.
Sure.
Why should somebody do a trust, or why should somebody not do a trust? Is there a kind of a quick overall 1 or 2 minutes? And then I appreciate that you're willing to let people reach out to you after this meeting or some other future time to get more information, but why should somebody, or why should somebody not?
So a trust, now this is the most basic type of trust people do, is called a revocable living trust. The first question, well, not the first, but one of the initial questions I ask is, do you own real estate in another state? If you live here and you have a house in North Carolina or Georgia or wherever it is, you absolutely need to have a revocable trust. A revocable trust prevents probate if you have the trust and you transfer your assets into it. So it just depends on what type of assets you have. We create a trust. You are the trustee of your trust as long as you're living and as long as you're competent. The document names what's called a successor trustee, which steps in if you become incapacitated or if you pass away. Any assets inside the trust are transferred under the terms of that trust to the beneficiaries you've listed. So, if someone comes to me and they say I have a house and a bank account and an IRA, you really don't need a trust. There's other ways we can get around a probate there. You can list beneficiaries on your bank account. You have beneficiaries on your retirement account already, so that passes outside of probate or the will. And then the house, we can do what's called an enhanced life estate deed, if that makes sense for you. That is a document that allows you to name a beneficiary on your real estate, but still maintain all the same rights that you have now. So it really is a case-by-case basis as to whether or not you need a trust. But if you have real estate in 2 different states, then the answer is absolutely. For cost and expense and ease to your family, you need to talk to somebody about getting a revocable trust. I know that's not a lot of detail, but.
No, that's helpful, Katherine. Thank you so much. And if there are more questions coming in the chat box that are directed towards your part of it, we'll hit those at the end of the meeting if there's time, once Jamie is done also. So do you mind, Katherine, introducing us? I know Cameron, I think, is not going to be the speaker, but someone else is filling in. If you'll manage that transition for us.
Yeah, so as I said, my husband, we own Naugle Funeral Home on Hendricks Avenue, and he is not able to speak today, but Shauna White is works with us, and she's wonderful, and she's going to tell you guys a little bit about the funeral home side and pre-need planning.
Okay, I'm gonna start my little timer too. My name is Shauna White. As Katherine said, I have worked here at the funeral home for almost 6 years now. I started out answering the phone, and I progressed into other activities here at the funeral home. I am now a licensed pre-need counselor. I sit down with people and help them plan their final arrangements, be it cremation, burial. I do a lot of work with elder care attorneys that send people over here for us to help them, and also what do you call the guardians? Katherine just said it. Yes, also guardians. We can help make an irrevocable trust. We do write all of our pre-needs into a trust account, so it is protected. And we can make it irrevocable. And that's how we help guardians and elder care attorneys help their clients qualify for Medicaid, so that they get their care covered. And that is not considered an asset by the state, which I'm sure most of you working in this field know. I really enjoy helping people make their plan for their families, because it really truly is a gift for the family, because when they come in, they're emotional. It's a stressful time for their family, but they know exactly what mom or dad wanted, because they've already laid it out and put it down on paper, and it takes a lot of the guesswork and pressure off. Things are covered and paid for, but also they don't have to question, did mom want to be cremated or did she want to be buried? She has it, down for them to know. And all those decisions have been made in advance for them. I don't know what else to say. I kind of landed this job on the fly, so I haven't really prepared that much other than, what I do and how I do it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to
Well, I would like to just jump in there too. We are a full service funeral home. It's on Hendricks Avenue. We have a big chapel. So we do anything from the most simple cremation to a full funeral with a burial. Something that a lot of people are doing these days is called a full service cremation, which Shauna could probably tell you more about, but you basically have a full service, but instead of going to the cemetery, there's a cremation at the end. So it allows the family to have the service, to have the, to be able to pay their respects, but it's more, unfortunately, talking about money, but more cost effective, because there is not the purchase of the burial plot. So, Shauna is fabulous. My husband, Cameron, any of them would be happy to talk with your clients. We've been around for 100+ years. My husband's 4th generation funeral home. I'm sorry he couldn't be here today. He had a service. We have been very busy, as I'm sure you can guess, with COVID. And so, that's sad for a lot of the families, but anytime we can help you or answer any of your questions, feel free to call us. We would be happy to do that. Any questions on the funeral home side?
Yeah, so Katherine, a question came in, is there, and Katherine or Shauna, whoever will take this, is there financial assistance for funeral expenses? And maybe even elaborate, like military, Medicare, Medicaid, is there any programs, help, etc.?
So the VA covers, like if you pass in a VA facility, like a hospital or a nursing facility, they cover the expense of the transportation from that facility to the funeral home. They do not really cover any of the funeral expenses, except they provide a veteran a burial space, a headstone, and the vault at a national cemetery. They will help pay a stipend towards the purchase of a plot, and they also provide a marker, a stone marker, in a private cemetery. But you'll be responsible for your own vault if it's a private cemetery. There are some things with the VA, like depending on your status, that I'm not real familiar with all the qualifications, but a VA person can help you, where they do pay like $350 or something back towards the covering of your service information, like your burial or your cremation. But every veteran is entitled to a burial space marker and the vault at the National Cemetery. Or if you're cremated, they put you in a columbarium or ground burial.
Their spouse as well, right?
And their spouse, yeah, exactly.
And a dependent child.
Yeah, and I've only done that once, a dependent child, but I am familiar with that process as well now. What was the other part of the question?
Well, I think right now there's COVID relief as well through FEMA.
Yeah.
If you have a death based on COVID, they'll pay.
It does specifically have to state COVID, you know, on it to apply for the FEMA relief. And I will tell you, our pre-needs, the way they're set up, you can make a down payment of, like, I'm just going to use this for instance. We do a lot of simple cremation, and a cremation permit and 5 death certificates is $1,300. So we ask people to make like a $200 down payment, and then they can break up the rest of the payments over 2 years. So there is no finance charge. There is no, what do you call it, interest on that. They just deduct, you know, the $50 or whatever you're comfortable making, the payment that you're comfortable making, directly on a charge card or your bank account, and then it you know, as it pays off, it goes into the trust. If you were to happen to pass before that is paid off, we would just use what is in the trust to make a thing, and then your family would be responsible for the difference. But it does lock in the rate. So when you set a pre-need, it locks in the rates of, I always equate it to like the prepaid college program. You're locking in the rates of today for something you're going to need today in the future. So your prices are locked in at the price point for today, as opposed to what it will be in 15 or 20 years. So that's one of the benefits of doing pre-planning, because you are locking in the rates of today.
Very good. Shauna, a question came in of how do you apply for the FEMA assistance for funeral costs?
There's
How
a
does
link
somebody
on
do
the
that?
FEMA website. It's the FEMA.org, .gov, I think is, and then you go under disaster relief, and there's an actual link for COVID funeral arrangements. And you have to send. I've not applied for it. I've just sent the link to people, but I believe you have to send them a copy of the death certificate, and then answer a bunch of questions, and send them a copy of a paid invoice from a funeral home. So they don't pay the funeral home, they pay the family directly. So the family does have to front the money to the funeral home, but then they can get reimbursed from FEMA.
And then it looks like Janice has dropped that in the chat box, the link to that. So if anybody is interested, you can grab that. It looks like it's going to the FEMA website. And then Shauna, what should people think of before they get there and sit down with you for the pre-need planning? What kinds of questions, decisions, so people can prepare before they get there? What does that look like?
The basic one, are you going to be doing cremation or burial? And then the next one, are you going to have some type of memorial or funeral service?
For some reason, Shauna, you're cutting out a little bit. Sometimes the volume is perfect, and then other times I can't hear it quite. Is anybody else, or it might just be me? All right. Okay. So Shauna, I'm not sure why, because it looks like your head is exactly where it is, and then just sometimes it just does its own thing. But
I don't know.
If you don't mind, would you repeat that?
Sure. So the number one, the first decision you want to make before you, we can make that decision together, but most people, you need to know in your head, are we going to do cremation? Are we going to do burial? Because there's different tracks. Now, the next question would be, or the next decision you would need to make are you going to have some type of funeral or memorial service? Does it matter whether you're going to do cremation or burial? Because we have options for that for both scenarios. Like Katherine was saying, we do a lot of cremation with full service funeral, but we also
Shauna, we're losing you pretty bad. Can you all hear me? So I'm gonna
So now
fuss
I
at my
can
husband.
actually-
We got to get
I
a new
can-
camera for you, but you just have to decide, do you want a funeral? Do you want a full service? Do you want a burial? You know, and those are things that just have a general idea, because you can come in and sit down and talk to Shauna or Cameron, whoever it is, and they'll go through the prices for you. But just say, you know, this is kind of what I have in my mind as an idea of what I wanted. And then they can kind of give you some costs and different ways to pay for it. One thing I wanted to touch on too was, if you truly have an indigent client that the family cannot afford cremation, the city of Jacksonville actually steps in at that point, and they contract with a funeral home in Jacksonville, and those cases go through the city. So if someone truly can't afford it, now I'll tell you, it can take 3 or 4 months. So that's something to think about. But also another thing people do is the GoFundMe. You know, we've seen a lot of that where they raise money for the family. And so that's another option. But I'd say pre-planning is your best bet, because A, you lock in the price where it is today, and B, it's something that your kids aren't having to come up with the money when that time comes, you know, and you've made all the decisions. So you're not grieving and sitting there trying to figure out, well, what would mom have wanted? What song would she have wanted? What, you know, all these things can all be done in advance. So it's just the benefit of that.
Very good. And for right now, all of the questions have been answered on this part. Unless Shauna or Catherine, if you have anything to kind of wrap that part up, and if not, we'll move on to Jamie. But Catherine and Shauna, any last comments before we move forward?
I put my contact information in the chat box, the phone number here at the funeral home, as well as the website, and you can look at things online too. So if you have any questions, again, just like Catherine, you can call and talk to me, and I can answer most of them. Okay.
Very good. Shauna, thank you so much. Catherine, anything before we move forward?
No, I just appreciate you guys listening to us today. And if we can help you at all, we're happy to do that. Just call us.
Very good. And then if there's more questions at the very end that pertain to you, we'll circle back to that and we'll invite you to respond again to that. So Shauna, I did not see your information in there. Still coming. Oh, it's higher up. Got it. All right. The Zoom producer says it's right there. So good. So thank you, Catherine and Shauna. Very appreciated, very informative. And again, thank you for being willing to speak to folks individually, post this, that you're a resource for them. So we really, really do appreciate that time that you're willing to spend with them. With that, Jamie, I'm going to toss it over to you. And Jamie, if you'll again do a great self-introduction of yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Okay. I am going to share my screen. There we go. I'm Jamie Buller, and I'm the Director of Advanced Care Planning. I oversee the Honoring Choices Florida program. Honoring Choices Florida was created about 8 years ago in collaboration with all of the local hospitals and health systems. And it was created when Community Hospice, who oversees the program, recognized that patients were coming into hospice care at the point they lacked capacity, and no one knew what kind of care they wanted. So our leadership team approached the leadership teams of the local hospitals, and the CEOs all said, we have the same issue. We have patients in ICU every day. Nobody knows what they want. There was no documentation, and we have family members at the bedside who are fighting and arguing. So recognizing that no one really wants their last days in a hospital ICU or in a hospice bed to look like that, we created this program to help people make decisions in advance about what they'd want. So Katherine talked about advanced directives. I'm not going to go back into those. I'm going to talk more and focus on advanced care planning. Ideally, if you do good advanced care planning, the end result is an advanced directive, which is the written document. So Many people have not had a conversation with their family or with health providers if they already have a serious illness because they're afraid of the discussion. It's a difficult topic. Who wants to talk about it? Some people tend to think, well, how can I make decisions today for something that might happen 20 years from now? And I don't know what that will look like. It can also be viewed as negative because one of the very first things that people talk about is do not resuscitate, and do you want to be resuscitated or not? And then certainly many people lack information and don't know how to start. So in thinking about what advanced care planning is, one of the easiest ways for me to define it is it's all about the conversation. It's that communication with your family, with providers, with anyone in your community. So it may be friends, partners, and that conversation should include things such as personal experiences. I can tell my family members, having worked in an acute care hospital for 34 years, exactly what I want my end of life to look like and exactly what I don't want it to look like. And that's drawing on those experiences of what I saw in a hospital. Now, many people have experiences not from their work life, but from personal life. So you may have experienced the death of a parent or grandparent or partner, and it might have been what I'd call a good death, or maybe not such a good death. And so our personal experiences help us identify and define what we want for ourselves. We also want to make sure that we talk to family members and health providers about any personal, religious, or cultural beliefs that we have that may influence the kind of care we'd want. And then I like to group those last two bullets together in thinking about a quality of life and what our goals of care we would want as far as goals of care. So advanced care planning is something that I tell adults we should start doing at the age of 18. When I speak to groups at UNF or JU, they think I'm there to talk to them about their parents. But when I tell them that something sudden can happen and you could be in a car accident on your way home from school today, sometimes it clicks and they realize that there is a certain amount of planning that they should undertake at a young age. Well, part of that conversation is about their quality of life. And so for a young person, that quality of life and their goals of care may look very different than someone who is at an advanced age. I did my first living will and healthcare surrogate designation when I was 24, and I was working in one of those ICUs. And through the years, I have updated it as things have changed. I had to update when I needed to change my surrogate because my father was my surrogate and he died. And I also needed to change my living will because what has become important to me now that I'm in my 60s is very different than what was important to me when I was in my 20s. So thinking about what quality of life is and what our goals are helps shape what we want. Katherine mentioned a decision maker, and whether that decision maker is in the form of a durable power of attorney who has healthcare decision authority or a healthcare surrogate, these are the most critical aspects of choosing that person. And these are the kinds of questions one should ask themselves before they get to Katherine's office to sit down to appoint that person. We want to make sure that we've identified if that person we want to be our healthcare decision maker is willing to assume the responsibilities. We need to make sure we've talked to them enough so that they understand what kinds of decisions we would make, because by law, they're actually being asked to make decisions based on substituted judgment, meaning what I would want for myself versus what they would want for me. And you want to make sure that they're willing to follow your decisions and your wishes versus doing something that they prefer. And then finally, you want to make sure that it's someone who can make difficult decisions in a crisis, because when they're being asked to make end-of-life decisions, in particular in a hospital ICU, doctors don't typically say, I'll give you a week to think about this. You come back to me when you've made a decision. They want decisions made pretty quickly. So those are the factors to consider when choosing your surrogate. Now, I said it's kind of hard sometimes to think about having the conversation. So how do you even start? Think about, on the left-hand side, you see, think about what it is about me they should know, what it is about life. What do I believe about life that my family should know? And what it is about my choices they should understand. So the more you can turn the conversation on yourself to engage family members in having this discussion, the easier it will be. The other thing about having the conversation is it's not something that you're going to be able to bring up once and be done. This is a conversation that happens over and over and over again. And the more you talk about it, the more you normalize it within a family. So I'll share a quick personal example. When I had to make a change to my healthcare surrogate, my dad was always my surrogate because my husband had made it very clear he would not honor my wishes. When my dad died, I had to choose a new surrogate, and I had 2 adult children. I called my oldest, and he said, told him what I needed. He said, Mom, I know exactly what you want. You've talked about this my whole life, but I cannot be the one making decisions and talking to doctors. So I called my daughter, and before I could even get everything out, she said to me, heck yeah, Mom, I can do that for you. I know exactly what you want. We've talked about this my whole life. So we had talked about it enough to normalize the conversation, and I have confidence that there's not going to be arguing and fighting at my bedside when my daughter steps in to make decisions. So make sure they understand exactly what it is you want, normalize that conversation, and let them know when things change. After you have the conversation, you want to make sure you document your wishes, document who your decision maker is, either through the durable power of attorney or the healthcare surrogate in whatever form you choose to use. Make sure to make lots of copies, give copies to everyone you've named as decision makers, to your health providers, to other family members. Make sure to talk to family members. Tell everyone exactly what it is you want. I tell people, keep a document handy. You take a copy with you every time you go to the hospital, because by federal law, they're required to ask if you have a living will, and they're supposed to ask for you to give them a copy, because this is a document that can be changed and updated through your lifespan. You want to make sure they have the most recent version of your document. The Honoring Choices Florida program, now that's kind of, all talking about advanced care planning. I'll share a little bit about what the program does. We do an extensive training to people in the community who work with individuals who should have an advanced care planning conversation. And the training is for people who we call facilitators. There's a 6-hour online component to training, and then an 8-hour in-person class in which we actually teach the skills to help guide the conversation. These facilitators are in the community. Many of them are employed by our hospital and health partners, but there are some who are employed by our community partners, such as senior centers, retirement and independent living facilities, home health agencies. And these facilitators establish times that they meet with individuals and perhaps a family member or the person who's chosen to be a healthcare surrogate and guide that conversation. These facilitations are in person or they can be virtual via FaceTime or through Zoom. They can also be in someone's home or in a neutral location, helping guide that conversation and helping people explore what their experiences and preferences are. It's all free to anyone in the 15 county service area. Our staff also host a monthly virtual webinar. And then, of course, we do the facilitator trainings 4 times a year, and details on the webinars and the trainings are on the Honoring Choices Florida website, which is right there. You can reach us through the website, or you can call that number and leave a message, and we have someone who can get back with you. If you are on the website, you'll also find under the resources tab a lot of what we call fact sheets. They're actually information sheets. So if you're having a discussion with someone about CPR and they ask you, well, what is the success rate of CPR? We have a fact sheet on CPR on the website, and you can pull that up and provide it to them, go over it with them. But there are fact sheets on artificial nutrition and hydration, CPR, dialysis, organ donation, lots of treatment options that people are asked to consider at end of life, and the facts are there. So I'm happy to, Laura, I guess if you want to tell me if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, so Jamie, a great question came in when you were showing the slide specifically about the conversation starters, et cetera. Will you be able to share these slides? And we know sometimes it's proprietary or something. Is there ways that people can get this information either via the slides, which Alex would be happy to send out post-meeting if you want to get those to her. So.
Okay, I'm happy to.
Okay. And then second question, if somebody cannot get somebody to an attorney and they have not made any of these decisions, and you work with them to get some of these decisions made, whatever their choices are, does it need to be notarized? Does it have to be an official legal document? Are there forms on the Honoring Choices website that people can use? The person's not going to ever see a lawyer. You're happy just to get them to make some decisions. How should that be documented and, again, notarized, legal, et cetera?
Okay. So if they do not use an attorney to complete a living will and designate a healthcare surrogate, they certainly can use the Honoring Choices Florida document. It is on the Honoring Choices Florida website. There is a tab that says Complete My Advanced Care Plan, and they can do it electronically, print it, and then sign and have witnessed, or they can print the entire document. They can also call us. The number is on the document. They can call, and the website. They can call us and we will mail them a document if they want an original. The document is very nicely set up because there are direction pages on the left and the document pages are on the right. And it does serve as the living will and the healthcare surrogate designation. Florida does not require either of those advance directives to be notarized. They have to be witnessed by 2 people. The surrogates who have been designated cannot act as witness, and one witness has to be someone other than a spouse or a blood relative. So notary is not required.
Okay. All right. So Jamie, thank you so much. I think we've hit all the questions that are in there. I've looked a couple of times. And I think that we've got those covered. So thank you very much. And if I could have a virtual or a round of applause for all of our speakers today. Very helpful, very knowledgeable, very informative, and hopefully it helps not only just those folks that we're going to be working with, but of course, all of those clients, seniors, et cetera, that everybody is helping and making sure that they get what they would like that those later parts of life to look like. So thank you all very much. Shauna, thank you for pinch hitting, and Katherine for setting someone up to do that with us. We appreciate it. And these programs are planned by these folks behind the scenes. So again, huge thank you to these folks here. Some of them are on the call with us today. So if you are and you've got your video on, give us a wave so people know who you are. And they're already thinking about forward to the November topic. You'll be hearing more about that over the next few weeks. We'll get all of that information to you. So we also want to wrap up by a big thank you to the birthday person, Al, with Oasis Senior Advisors. We really very much appreciate it. LinkedIn group, if you haven't joined, please consider doing so. Great way to connect. And our next meeting is in November. So we are going to do our door prize. I'm going to stop sharing. So we've got 2 door prizes, $25 Amazon gift cards. And I believe that we've got a sharing of the screen going on here. So we are ready to roll. We'll stop and tell us who that is. Lori. So Lori Anderson, there you are. Love it. So Lori, I'll be getting in touch with you after the meeting. Get you connected with Al. He'll be mailing your gift card. And one more. Andrea Spencer. I know she was on here. She's probably buried a little bit in here. So Andrea, I think that you are here also. I just don't have that visual in front of me. Andrea, are you with us? Certainly she's still here. You got her? Okay, my visual is not showing me everybody. So Andrea, again, congratulations. Thank you, Al, for being willing to supply the door prizes for us. Very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, speakers. Thank you for coming today. And we will hopefully see you in November. If you're not on the email list, let us know. We'll get you connected with Alex, but otherwise you'll get an invite here in a few weeks. We'll get you set up for November, another great program. So thanks, everybody. Have a nice weekend.